It's pretty clear to anyone that watched the semi-final of the Australian Open that Djokovic was not himself that night. Yes, Sinner played an amazing match. He played an amazing tournament. That's why he's the Australian Open champion. But that doesn't detract from how bad Djokovic's performance was. I've certainly never seen him make errors like that before. And if you listen to his post-match interview, he pretty much said it's the worst performance he's ever had. So the question is why? What can cause Djokovic to play that badly? And is there anything that you can learn from it to help you within your game? That's what I want to talk about in this video. And the rationale that I'm going to give you is probably a little bit different to some of the takes you might have heard, especially if you were listening to the same commentary that I was during the match. I normally love Johnny Mac, but some of the things he was saying were pretty ridiculous. To suggest that Father Time is catching up with Djokovic, or maybe he's losing his motivation, that's a little bit crazy considering he won 3 out of 4 Grand Slams last year, plus the Tour finals. Oh, and he got to the final of the other one. So 2 months later, is he suddenly too old? I don't think so. That's not what went on. But I think there is a logical reason as to why he played so badly, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. Hopefully you enjoy it and find it helpful. If you do, give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel before, it's much appreciated if you could do that as well. If you look at the sort of mistakes that Djokovic was making, especially in the first 2 sets, he was off balance a lot because his spacing was off and he wasn't quite set up in the right position, so he was kind of reaching some of the time, and he was also completely mistiming shots. And really there's only one common denominator that can cause that to happen, and it's that he wasn't seeing the ball well. And that might sound a little bit strange. What does it mean he wasn't seeing the ball well? He's a professional tennis player. Yeah, but vision isn't a static thing. It's something that changes on a day-to-day basis. It fluctuates, just like everything else in terms of human performance. We're not robots. Djokovic isn't a robot, which means that things change from day to day. This happens to you in all realms of life. Some days you'll wake up feeling amazing, knowing that you're going to crush life. Other days you'll wake up and you have to drink 20 cups of coffee just to drag yourself out of bed. Same thing on court. Sometimes you're amazing and you feel like you can't miss. Other days you feel like you can't make shots. Now the same thing happens to professionals, but just on a completely different level. The fluctuations in our tennis performance are down there. Tennis professionals, they're fluctuating at a way higher level. But we know this from watching the pros. Sometimes they're amazing, sometimes they're even more amazing. That's this natural fluctuation. And obviously the same thing happens to Djokovic, only instead of fluctuating down there, Djokovic is fluctuating up there, way higher than everyone else, or pretty much everyone else. When we see some of the other top players, they do also fluctuate, but they're down there somewhere. Sometimes they play well, sometimes they don't play as well. And what we generally see is if Djokovic is having a really bad day, is having one of these dips, and some of the real top players, like we saw with Sinner in the semi-final, if they're having a great day on the day that he has a bad day, we've got this interception point where they're able to beat him. And what we've got to consider is Djokovic was really bad. Sinner was playing one of the best matches of his life, and Djokovic still found a way to win a set. But the question is, what causes this fluctuation? Why is it that his visual system was functioning so poorly on that particular day? So I think the answer to that is inflammation. Djokovic was dealing with inflammation. We know that he had a cold at the start of the tournament and he had an injury prior to the tournament. When your immune system is fighting off some kind of virus, it creates inflammation, and that inflammation travels around the body and affects different tissues in different ways. When it travels to joints, it tends to create pain. When it goes into the nervous system and into the brain, it can affect your ability to produce energy, so it prevents mitochondria, the powerhouses that produce energy within the body, from functioning properly. It also prevents different parts of the brain from communicating in the way that they normally would. So people can get brain fog and people can have issues with their visual system or coordination because the inflammation affects the communication in these different parts of the brain. So it seems to me like Djokovic was dealing with inflammation. Now the question is, how can we take that and use that to our advantage? What can we learn from it? And I think the big thing to learn is that that was really unusual for Djokovic. Obviously he was fighting off some kind of virus or something. Normally he doesn't have those dips in performance, because he does everything he can to minimize the effects of inflammation on his body. If you haven't read his book, Serve to Win, I highly recommend it. He talks about some of the nutritional changes that he had to make when he was younger, because he used to be plagued by lots of injury and fatigue issues, and he had to pull out of a lot of matches until he learned that there were certain foods creating inflammatory issues within his body. He removed those inflammatory foods, and it completely transformed the trajectory of his career. Since then, he's gone to do a lot of different things. So he does a lot of breathing practices, a lot of meditation, and a number of other things to help keep inflammation down in his body. And that's stuff that you can take on board. If you want to become a better player, it's important that you work hard on things off the court as well. I personally have to do a lot of work on nutrition. I've had a number of concussions, and they affect my visual system. I've unfortunately also got an autoimmune mechanism going on that affects different parts of my brain. So normally I see very clearly, I can track the ball well, I can read and judge distances, but when my body becomes inflamed, I can't tell how far the ball is away. I hit it late and everything's off. So I do everything I can to eat cleanly and remove inflammatory foods. Now, what Djokovic has to do nutritionally and what I have to do nutritionally are different, and what you might need to do nutritionally is different. It's all about finding what works for your body. But if you're the sort of player that struggles with frequent injuries, you have issues with fatigue, you have issues with focus and concentration, you have visual issues, you struggle with shot selection and decision making, all those things can point to inflammation working away at things. So if that's the case, honestly, I would start by reading Djokovic's book. That'll enable him to be the messenger rather than me telling you what foods cause inflammation. But that's a great place to start, and you'll probably find that it'll be really beneficial for your game. Okay, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, really appreciate it if you could do that as well. If you've got any comments about what you think about Djokovic's performance, or any comments about what I've talked about in this video, leave them down below, and I'll catch you next time.